Councilmember Cook,
Here.
Councilmember Fairley,
Here.
Councilmember Osborne,
Here.
Councilmember Thomas.
Present. Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on approval of the agenda. Can we take a vote, please? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Number 4, presentations, comprehensive plan. A, B, C, H, M, Z.
Hello? Hello? If you all can hear me okay without this, I'm fine without it.
I can.
In the audience here.
Well, hello, good evening, Council. Let's see if I can get this presentation up here. My name is Cyrus Oswald. I'm with Atwell, and I've been working as the consultant on this project for a bit now, which is the 2024 Comprehensive Plan Update, as seen on the screen. I've come in tonight just to give kind of a project overview, go over these individual appendix items that you're talking about tonight, and look at the next steps towards adoption. So first, a brief requirement recap that talks about, a lot of this, by the way, will look familiar from last week. I've tried to pare it down, but just give a brief refresher. Brief requirement recap of the kind of jurisdictional landscape that you're working in. Go over the actual appendix items, and then look forward towards project status and next steps. Again, the Growth Management Act, or GMA for short, has a number of required chapters, which are listed on the left. And then in the middle, you can see the element chapters that Algona is creating. There are 2 on top of GMA requirements, natural environment and parks and recreation chapters. And then there are several other requirements outlined in the GMA that don't manifest as actual elements, they just have to be done and documented. Here is a brief structure of the comp plan. On the left side, you can see all the chapters, all of which I believe have been recommended by Planning Commission and have been brought for you, except for the transportation element. And then on the right side, you can see all the appendices. Those highlighted are the ones that you were talking about today. The first 5 of which I'm discussing, and I believe later during the actual Planning Commission meeting, Grant Osborne, I believe, will be discussing the transportation improvement plan. So here's highlighted here for you guys to see. To go over those appendices that you're not discussing tonight briefly. The capital improvement plan has been fully drafted and it's in review with staff. We're kind of finalizing it. The land capacity analysis also has been completed. It's been vetted by Commerce, which is the body that ultimately will certify the plan. And we plan to bring that in with the entire comp plan draft at the end. But if you want it at any point before that, just let me know and we can include it in the next agenda. Traffic analysis is almost done, but very much in progress by DKS, the other consultant. They're having to deal with, frankly, hiccups in state guidance. The state has not released guidance for specific aspects, that being future multimodal level of service parts. So they're having to do a lot of extra research to look into best practices and whatnot. But the traffic analysis, kind of transportation stuff is very much in progress. SEPA is the State Environmental Policy Act, which has to be completed kind of at the end of this whole process when you know the full scope of what the comp plan is looking like. Again, that multimodal analysis, again, DKS is working through that strange landscape of state requirements and guidance. Public engagement summary, we have all the materials for that, and we're working through creating it as we are with the implementation plan. These 2 things sort of have to be done at the end of the process just because implementation looks at the full plan and then phases forward what that would look like. And then public engagement summary, all the public engagement has to be completed. Soundview checklist is an item that we're looking into as well. This has been kind of in the conversation and on our work plan since the beginning, as I understand it. But we're not sure if it's a requirement or not, so I'm looking into that and we'll get back to you next time I see you. Those are all the chapters and appendices, and now I'll get into kind of what is remaining to go. For city staff and the consultant, we have to continue to present materials to you all, obviously, for adoption. We have to finalize that transportation element and the accompanying appendices. We have to summarize the public engagement, finish all the other appendix materials, work on that SEPA checklist and do the relevant public noticing. And then sort of towards the end of that process, we have to work with Commerce to work on getting it certified and reviewed. So why are we here? What are we looking for? Staff is generally here to support the council in making informed decisions. At the end of the day, this is your plan, it's your community. We're just here basically to provide advice. Specifically today, I'm looking for input on all the content of these appendices. A lot of them are pretty technical, but obviously I want them to be the most readable possible. I want them to be the most clear. I want them to reflect your community in the best way. And I'm trying to get input today on that before sending it off as a complete comprehensive plan draft to those reviewing bodies that we talked about a little bit more last time, PSRC, Department of Commerce, because it's best if the plan is sort of as fully fleshed out as possible, has been reviewed, has been vetted to a degree before sending it off to those bodies, so that when they have edits to make and they have changes, there's not going to be conflict between those changes and then any kind of final changes that you are looking at when the plan is finalized. I hope that makes sense. And that's sort of why we've been bringing these to you as they are coming out, effectively. Ultimately, staff is also seeking adoption of this plan from council, obviously. And then, just again to emphasize, it's your community, it's your plan. I'm just here to provide input and technical support, if you will, but I want it to reflect your community the best way. Now I'll go over the specific appendix items that we're discussing today. Appendix A is the glossary of terms. Very simply, this is just kind of a reference within the comp plan for any somewhat technical terms that might be laid out throughout. I think this is relatively self-explanatory. Appendix B is a periodic checklist. This identifies the applicable regulation updates for this comprehensive plan cycle. So comprehensive plans have to be updated regularly, and this checklist came out from Commerce, I believe, and identifies on the left-hand side there all of the kind of updated regulations, and it provides a structure to walk through the comprehensive plan update to make sure you meet all those new requirements. Appendix C is the policy gap analysis, which is somewhat of a similar document in that it looks at the policy. I should also note this is not very clearly laid out in the packet where it begins, but it begins on page 68 of the packet, so the gray square page number.
So could you go back to B for just a second?
Certainly, yeah.
I don't see one in mine. What is that?
Yeah.
Anybody?
I'll get a packet, I can probably point out the page number.
That's in several pieces. I don't know what's in there.
Yeah,
It's
this
in here.
is it.
That's it. Okay.
This is it, yeah. Periodic update checklist.
But so you have stormwater on your. Is this the first page, or is this just an example?
It's just an example.
You just pull a sheet. Okay.
Yeah, my apologies.
I'm with you then. Okay.
It just gives an example of some of the content of what we're looking at.
Then C would be in here also.
Exactly, starting on packet page 68. Is that not?
Yeah, we don't go to 51.
Interesting. Maybe the PDF version online is another thing. I believe you had a much larger format document. That is it.
This is C.
Yes, that's kind of C.
This is C. The big one with purple on it is C.
Again, I apologize for the confusion there. That's
Yeah.
just one of them.
We'll figure it out.
Maybe tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this kind kind of takes a different approach to looking at how the policies must be updated and kept concurrent with, other larger jurisdictions, if you will. So it looks at Puget Sound Regional Council policies on the far left-hand side, and then lines up the relevant King County policies, and then looks at any applicable City of Algona policies, and then steps through if there's a gap or a partial gap in what the city is supposed to do to meet those broader regional policies. Does that make sense? It's another policy guidance document.
Is the red letter, what's the red letter indicate? Additions, changes?
I believe that indicates additions since the last final cycle. Similarly, the left-hand column underlined is new language in crosstab that was eliminated from the last cycle.
Okay.
The next appendix is the housing needs assessment, Appendix H. This probably looks familiar. It was developed as part of Algona's Housing Action Plan in 2022. The title kind of says it all, but it looks at the housing landscape in the city and what the needs are based off of population projections and what the county says you need to accommodate. It has a lot. It's a very data-heavy document. Shows a lot about different housing types, etc. And then the final appendix that I'll be talking about today is Appendix M. It's the PSRC certification checklist. This is almost PSRC's blend of that periodic update checklist and the policy gap analysis. So it looks at all of PSRC's required elements for the standard certification, and then you check off those boxes as you identify them as having been met. Obviously, there's a reason why we include all of these documents as appendices. They're super dense, they're not that engaging, but they're important analysis that has to happen to show, at least with these tonight, they basically show that you're meeting all of the requirements laid out by PSRC, Commerce, King County regulations, etc. I can pause here to take questions on any of those documents or finish up, and then I can take them after, whatever council would prefer. I'll continue. So planning commission tasks that remain, we have to bring the transportation element to them, along with those transportation appendices, as discussed earlier today and last time. And then city council will have to basically adopt the full plan, including introduction, land use, housing, capital facilities and utilities, natural environment, parks and recreation, and all the appendices. As we discussed last time, PSRC and King County have somewhat extended review timelines, which is why I would recommend that the council look to adopt this plan as a whole entity by July 31st of this year. So thank you very much. Again, this is your plan. I'm here to provide support and input, but I'll take any questions or facilitate a discussion as needed.
I don't have any question, but I just got more reading.
Lots of interesting information in there. No, a lot of work has gone into this. I really appreciate that. So,
Of course, yeah.
it really helps us out a bit. Thank you.
Thank you.
No more questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, presentation B, mowing plume update.
Krista is coming.
Okay.
She's coming. So
Do we
can
want to
probably-
give her 10 minutes or?
Yeah, I think she's probably right on the way. So she just. Yeah,
Okay,
we can set it.
okay, yeah, this is pretty quick.
Let me see.
I mean, did you guys all get the email that I sent with Cyrus's email address?
Yes,
Okay.
I got it.
That's it.
What did you say?
Email is Cyrus's email address.
Thank you, Cyrus. Did you send it today?
No, I sent it
After
after
the
the last meeting.
please feel free, anything minor, major.
Well, I'd send anything that I had to the mayor.
Okay.
And then that's the channel. So you want that? Because I mean, they're supporting us, right? So I don't want to have a conversation with you without involving the staff.
Okay.
Right? Just so we're all looking at the same. So I'm not doing something over here and Jessica's working over here. Right?
They are waiting for one other party, so I don't know if you want to take a recess for 5 or 10 minutes. It sounds like she may be here, but I don't want to like rush her into the presentation either.
Yeah. That's our last big thing on it.
Well, they're crushed for time too.
I hadn't thought about holding still for years.
Can you join us?
Sure. Women in the executive board.
Now's the time for audience participation.
Audience participation.
Yeah, not even an audience,
There we go.
not even that one.
I think, you're setting up. That, Jessica's coming.
No, she said we could go ahead and start moving
Oh,
out.
here, okay.
It'll be a few minutes, so.
Hi, sorry I'm late. Traffic. I'm Krista Kaluzis, and I'm with the Department of Ecology, and with me is Dr. Lee Ma. He's the Boeing project, or the ecology project manager for the Boeing Auburn site. And we're here to talk about the cleanup, give you an update. Okay, contamination happened, and this is just a example photo. We're not allowed to have any photos of Boeing. They just don't let us do that. But they had these concrete vaults, a lot like this one, in better shape than this one. And inside those were tanks of a cleaning solvent called TCE. There was a heater in the bottom of the tank to heat up the solvent. And then there's a big cloud of vapor. That's why this tank is so deep. They would lower the parts into the vapor, not into the liquid. And the really cool thing about this, that they just thought was the best thing ever, the vapor's perfectly clean, always. So when you're low on solvent, you just add more. And so over time, the tanks leaked, some spills, these concrete vaults got cracked. Solvent went through those vaults and into the soil and into your groundwater. And the groundwater here moves really fast. Right, Dr. Ma? This is some fast moving groundwater. So, this isn't a picture of Boeing either. Again, they won't let us have pictures of the real site. But since those early days, in the early 60s and the 70s, we have environmental laws now. You have to manage your waste special ways. And ecology has a whole department of people that go check on all the Boeing sites, all the little sites, everybody. So things are much different now, and contamination isn't happening now, at least. Of course, sometimes there's accidents and we clean those up right away, but this long-term leaking over decades, we put an end to that. We hope, we pray. At this site, we studied the groundwater, the soil, the air inside people's homes that were above the contamination, and surface water. Nobody's being exposed to harmful chemicals. But we enforce cleanup even when people aren't at immediate risk. Because Boeing made the mess, they should clean it up and restore everybody's property who's down gradient of them. This plume is pretty old now, and the groundwater contamination is stable. It's not getting any worse. In fact, it's getting better over time. The plume's shrinking and getting less concentrated. And in this picture, and gosh, you guys aren't facing the right way to see the picture. I'm really sorry about that.
We have one.
Oh,
We have
awesome.
monitors.
Okay, see the colored squares? Those are the drinking water wells. And that gray area is where the plume of contamination is. And the blue arrow is the way the contamination would move with groundwater. So, thankfully, your drinking water wells are not near the contamination, and the contamination is moving away from the drinking water wells. So, your drinking water's safe. That's a really good thing. Also, your garden produce is safe to eat. Your pets are safe. You know, there's ditches and pooled water in people's yards around here, even though some of those yards are above contaminated groundwater. We tested the water in people's yards, the water in the ditch, and it's safe. Groundwater we clean up to a standard, usually for drinking water, which for trichloroethylene, this solvent that they used, 4 parts per billion, or 4 micrograms per liter. There's another cleanup level that we use for surface water. And the surface water cleanup level is set on the little critters that live in the mud that fish eat, and then we eat fish. So that cleanup level is a lot stricter. For TCE, it's more than 10 times stricter. It's 0.038 parts per billion. We're making Boeing clean up their plume that's not on their property to that strict surface water standard, because groundwater here is pretty shallow, and it's seeping into your surface water through the bottoms of ponds and ditches and through the banks. So, and Boeing was not happy about having to meet that surface water standard in groundwater before it discharged, but they agreed to it. And, well, we used an enforcement order, then they agreed to it. Now they didn't sue us. So, oops. Go back 1 or 2 now. Okay, here's where we are in the cleanup process. And we are implementing the cleanup action. We're doing active cleanup. Boeing is installing the wells right now. We're going to be injecting the bacteria, or the food for the bacteria that are already there, feeding them so they grow, and we've done a pilot study in this area, and it more than doubled the rate of breakdown of TCE. So it's a good thing. Yes?
So would that account for the not getting any worse, but even getting better?
You know, we're going to talk about that.
Okay.
It's not just that, not just the pilot study. Even where we didn't treat, it's getting better.
Okay, thank you.
We'll talk about that. Oops. I made it wrong. Okay. And TCE concentration in this one is in purple. In 2011, TCE concentration was 10 micrograms a liter, or 10 parts per billion, so 2.5 times that drinking water standard. And over time, the TCE has been coming down, and we're not treating this area at this well, but there are those natural bacteria in the soil and in the groundwater that basically eat the TCE and break it down into one of the products that you get when they're breaking it down is more hazardous than TCE, and then it's better and better and better. But, so by June 2020, so in 2011 it's 10, in 2020 it was 3.6. So that's meeting the drinking water standard at that well. it's good news.
What's the BC on that chart?
What's the what?
The BC, there's.
Vinyl chloride. Remember how I said there was one thing that was worse
Okay,
than the TCE? That's the vinyl chloride.
And what's the allowable for that?
Okay, 0.02 in surface water. So it's a lot more stringent or protective of a level than the TCE.
What is that running at now?
At that well,
Yeah.
let's see. Gosh, Lee, do you remember? It's like really
pretty close to the standard, 1.02. Yeah, it's really flat at the bottom.
it's hard to tell on this low, but probably not quite there yet. Getting close though. And the enhanced bioremediation, the active treatment that Boeing's going to do this summer, these are some pictures about, well, the top picture is where we did the pilot test in Algona's commercial area. The active treatment we're going to do is there and in a residential area. And we sent out a postcard so that people wouldn't be shocked or think something bad was going on, when actually what's going on is a good thing. It's a really good thing. Yes, that's the postcard. So we have the wells, we put the food down there for the bacteria, and it's vegetable oil, you know, that somebody patented, so they've emulsified it and mixed it with this vegetable oil. Feeds the bacteria and multiplies them so they can break down more TCE. It works awesome. So here's an example of where we did that sort of treatment. And you can see this well is in that Algona pilot test area, and the TCE is in purple, and it was like 100. And then just, let's see, it's like within 3 to 4 years after treatment, it's running about 0.3.
Yeah.
About 0.3. So it really is effective, and it speeds things up tremendously. But again, it's a natural bacteria that's there underground already. The treatment just helps it to grow faster and do more than it does by itself.
How is the vinyl chloride going up and down on the end of that chart?
The reason it does that is because as you break down the TCE, you generate some vinyl chloride. And then the bacteria eat the, so it's kind of a,
Shows it's working.
it kind of shows it's working, but sometimes things get a little bit worse before they get better. And that's one of the things about this kind of treatment is eventually it's a great thing, but there can be, if you treat too fast or you can have a vinyl chloride plume. You would never want to do that like under people's homes, generate extra vinyl chloride. And this is the treatment area, and this area was selected because it is a residential area, and it's breaking down, and it's already below the drinking water standard, but we felt that people would want more done in this area than, we felt they want some active treatment. And so we had Boeing do active treatment, and they agreed. So this was an area that we all agreed on. This area gets active treatment. And that's the work that people will see now, and that's why we sent out the postcard. And we figured it was high time to come and give you guys an update, because it's good news. After this active treatment, we'll be monitoring for quite a while to make sure that the cleanup keeps happening. But this is the big milestone. This is the big hurrah. This is all the work that we've been doing up till now. This is the cleanup.
So what is the projected projected timeline as, let's say, completion?
Completion. To meet that surface water quality criteria, it's gonna be a while, like 30 years, Lee?
Yeah, 20 to 30 years. And different area may have a different rate, deduction rate. And the one we select this area, like Kristen just said, is in the residential, in the Algona city residential area, and also close to surface water. So we want this area to be treated to make sure the contamination doesn't go into the surface water.
And Lee, do we know when the residential area will meet surface water quality criteria?
We don't have, I think the model kind of shows probably away 5-10 years.
5 to 10 years for them to meet surface water quality criteria. And every well is different, because some places were much more contaminated, and then some places there's more bacteria or better conditions for the bacteria to work. And those areas have cleaned up faster, even just on their own.
So the residential area we're talking about on this map here, can you tell us, I mean, we got a couple new monitoring wells and then we got some existing, because the picture that you show is just kind of, I don't know, vague to me and doesn't have any real landmarks on it. Would you know which well it's gonna be, or,
Oh, well,
or
there's,
where in the area?
Yeah, so the injection will be in this
Yeah,
two
that's,
lines.
yeah,
And this blue dot
yeah.
is the new monitoring well.
Is that the residential
That's,
injection?
yeah, that's not injection, but only for monitoring.
Oh, okay.
Injection only occurs in this right line. There's a bunch of wells, a lot of wells, and they are kind of 3 to 5 feet apart. But this is for monitoring. We figured that after going for this one, because if you look at this map, we have a pretty good distribution of mountain wells.
Yeah.
But then the flow, the contamination flow this way. So we want to catch it in the progress of anything happening. But we'll be able to do that. That's the monitoring out there. Okay.
not every well is used for both treatment and monitoring. Some of them are only for one or only for the other.
So I have a question. You earlier said that this enzyme or wherever it is, say the ground already.
The bacteria is in the ground
bacteria is
already.
in the ground, what are you injecting?
We're injecting the food for the bacteria, because if we inject some food, the bacteria have babies. I mean, I'm being really like, it makes them grow, it helps them like eat more. And it seems that we inject food and then they eat more of the solvent. It doesn't make sense to me exactly, but
Okay.
it works.
All right, so let's just say in a perfect world, they get done eating all this stuff, and all this is cleaned out. Does it just stay there?
The bacteria are there already, and they eat other things too in the soil.
Let's say if you have to keep feeding them, or you're gonna kill them.
No, we don't. We don't feed them, we don't kill them, they were there. We didn't invent them, they were naturally occurring and already there we sort of discovered that they were there working all along.
So are you at liberty to let us know, I know we all have a vested interest in wetlands and things like that. We see that the plume is heading north and west of the site and out into the big vast wetland areas up there. Is there any action that's being done in those areas?
This contamination, this remediation is to reduce that. So over the years, yeah, that's the concern. But what we see, the good news, like we just present, the plume is actually shrinking. It's not moving towards the wetland of the.
So the boundaries itself is shrinking.
They're shrinking.
Not just going this
naturally,
way.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
because the bacteria actually work best when the plumes dilute, you can't overwhelm them with a huge concentration of the solvent, it kills them off.
Right.
So they're working this way, we've been injecting and feeding them this way, so it's contracting on itself.
It's multiple process going on at the same time. When Boeing first had this contamination, high concentration and flow really fast was northwest. Then the aquifer there, the groundwater there, are much cleaner. Sand and gravel. There's less bacteria in those material compared with when you reach the wetland. When you get to the wetland, there's more organic matters. So there's more bacteria in those areas. So once the contamination goes through that direction, it got eaten really faster than the origin occur. So that's why this multiple process kind of make the total shrinking, getting smaller over the years.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Item 5, discussion. We have no discussion items. Okay. Item 6, audience participation. The City Council encourages public participation during meetings of the City Council and welcomes your comments. This time is set aside for you to speak to City Council on any issue. The Council ordinarily takes non-agenda matters under advisement before taking action. You are also invited to comment on action items as they are considered during the meeting. Individual speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each when addressing the City Council. When addressing the Council, please speak clearly, audibly, and state your name and address for the record. Would anybody like to speak?